Hi, welcome back to my channel. My name is Katharine for those who don't know, and in today's video I'm going to do another book haul. I previously did a book unhaul about 2 months ago in September, and when you're watching this it is now November. So I have to go through these and explain why I'm doing an unhaul again, just because I've had a bit of a reading crisis for what I want to continue reading in the future. I don't know if you've seen my previous video this month of me explaining why I'm mostly breaking up with mainstream booktube. I'm not quitting booktube in general. I really enjoy watching Christian fiction booktubers and book talkers and bookstagrammers. But for mainstream booktube and book talk and bookstagram, I'm kind of saying quits on it or just giving it up in general. That's not to say that I'm not going to be reading like some secular fiction, because there are some clean secular fiction books that I wouldn't be opposed to reading as long as they're clean and they don't have anything blatantly like demonic in it. I would certainly read those. So that's just me saying that I'm not like completely breaking up with mainstream booktube or book talk or bookstagram. I'm just making like a huge shift in like reading mostly Christian fiction from now on, and that's why I'm unhauling a lot of these books. Some of these books are being unhauled for more reasons than just because I'm trying to redirect what I'm reading. So I'll explain in depth of like each individual book. I won't be doing like full synopsises of like the books, but I certainly will explain like why I'm unhauling them. But yeah, let's just get into it. I have over 30 books. I think I counted 31 here. So let's just get into it. So I tried to separate these books into sections so it would be easier for me to explain the books and the reasoning behind why I'm getting rid of them for the most part. So let's start with this stack. So I have here Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children by Ransom Riggs, and I actually have been wanting to read this ever since I was like in high school. I don't know what it is, but I just seem to be drawn to like fantasy type supernatural books. I did grow up reading the Twilight series. I actually didn't end up finishing the Twilight series because Breaking Dawn for me like was really slow to get through, which is like the fourth book in the Twilight series. And that actually is something that I want to rebuy. It's something I unhauled the Twilight series. I unhauled it a few years ago, but I actually don't know why I did that in the first place. So I want to rebuy the series so that I can end up finishing the series and like reread it all the way through and then end up finishing it with Breaking Dawn. But I've always been kind of like drawn to that because I don't see the reason as like a Christian to not read like that kind of stuff as long as it's like not demonic. Like I know vampires are make-believe, I know werewolves are make-believe, things like that. So I don't see a problem reading those, like as long as it's like not openly demonic. Like I don't see a problem in reading those. But like for example, this one I've been wanting to read it since high school, but I don't know why I felt particularly drawn to read it. I don't know if it's because of the cover or like the synopsis of it. I know that I told you that I wasn't going to be going in depth of like the synopsis of these books, but for this one I'll do a quick one for you. So basically it's about an orphanage, and basically in this orphanage it seems to be abandoned, but like apparently this guy discovers it and it actually is far from abandoned. He finds these like peculiar children there, and just something about it being like an abandoned orphanage and like this guy discovering it kind of intrigued me when I was back in high school. But now I'm just like, why was I intrigued? It kind of seems really dark, and I have heard that these peculiar children have like magical powers and things like that, if I'm not mistaken. And the cover is just like so creepy. It gives me like The Shining vibes, like those twins that are at the end of the hallway. And I just don't see myself reading this. I mean, I know I was interested in high school, but like over the past decade that I've been out of high school, I've shown less and less interest in reading it. I saw this in like a free little library one day and I decided to get it because it's a free little library and I knew it was free, so I just took it. But now I'm like thinking about it and I'm like, why did I ever want to read this? Like as a Christian, it just seems a little bit eerie and demonic, and like you'll see in the next books that I'm gonna talk about, they're more thriller type books. I'm gonna try to stay clear of like thriller type books. I know there are like some Christian like suspense books, but like in terms of like Christian thrillers, no, not Christian thrillers, secular thrillers, I'm gonna try to stay clear of, because I just feel like there's a lot of like demonic undertones to a lot of them. And I also just have realized after reading a few thrillers over the past few months that like thrillers aren't really my thing in general, not just because they have like demonic undertones, but I don't even think that I'll read Christian suspense books because I just don't see that being a genre that I would enjoy. Like maybe I'll try out a Colleen Coble book once just to see if it would be my thing, but I highly doubt it. So let's get on to the other books that I have here that are in my like thrillery type stack. This next book is called Stalking Jack the Ripper, and this is by Carrie Maniscalco. And I just don't see myself reading this yet again because it's about Jack the Ripper, which apparently he's like a murderer, I believe, and this girl is trying to like track him down and like I think like murder him. I'm not entirely sure, but essentially it's like their romance of like her trying to track him down and they fall in love apparently. And at the time when I bought this, it was at a library sale and it was only like $1, so I ended up just getting it because I've heard a lot about it on like mainstream secular booktube, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna pick this up. It was in the fall time when I got this too, so I was like, oh, I'll read it for like, you know, the fall season and stuff like that. So since then, I bought this like 2 years ago. I just like have had a change in heart over like thrillers and like things like that, so I ended up just wanting to unhaul this, so that's the reasoning why behind this one. This next one I actually just recently read and I gave it a 3-star. It's called The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides. I think that's how you pronounce it. It's Greek, so please forgive me if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly. But essentially it's about this woman who is accused of murdering her husband, and she goes silent for a long time after she murders him, and she ends up being admitted to this mental institution, and it's about this psychotherapist who literally is, you know, trying to analyze her and like try to get her to talk. I am, first of all, not into thrillers that much anymore, like I mentioned previously, but I also just didn't enjoy this as much as I thought I would. The premise of it really intrigued me, of her like not talking and like being in a mental institution, but it just was really predictable and I kind of guessed the ending, and I'm trying to be better about not keeping books on my bookshelf that are under 4 stars. So that's the reason why I'm unhauling this. It has more just than I'm not into thrillers. It's like I actually had more reasoning behind this one in particular. But yeah, I just think this was a mediocre read and I don't foresee myself rereading this. The next book I have here, I don't have the dust jacket for it. It's called We Were Liars by E. Lockhart. Yeah, E. Lockhart. And essentially I got this at a thrift store. It's from Savers in particular, if you're familiar with the thrift store of Savers. I don't know if Savers is just a New England thrift store, but it's a chain thrift store, at least in the New England region. I don't know if it's a national, like, United States thing. But at least in New England, we have a lot of Savers, which is a chain thrift store. I got it there because it was only like $3 or $4. And I heard a lot about this book being like kind of a thriller, suspense type book where this family goes on vacation to this like private island, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. And like some shady stuff goes on during this one vacation that they go on there. And even from like the mainstream booktubers that I heard from on this, they didn't enjoy it. Like, I'm learning not to trust a lot of mainstream booktubers anymore, at least secular mainstream booktubers. But even if like they don't like this book, like, what makes me think that I'm gonna like it? So like, I don't know. I'm gonna unhaul this because first of all, it's like a thrillery type suspense, like secular book, and also like a lot of these booktubers or mainstream ones, like secular ones, didn't really enjoy it. So like, what makes me think that like these people that I already don't trust, not liking this, like I'm not gonna read it. I'm just not. It's short. I'm sure I could get it through it fast, but like, why waste my time? And then this book, Then She Was Gone, is another thriller book. I honestly don't even know what this is about. I saw it at the thrift store that I manage. I'm a manager of a thrift store, if you didn't already know that. But basically, I saw this donated at the thrift store that I manage, and I heard a lot about it. Like, the title of this book sounded really, really familiar, and I believe Lisa Jewell, who wrote this, is a popular author in like the thriller realm, if I'm not mistaken. And I just like picked it up without even reading like the synopsis because I was like, oh, like, let me just read it because it's popular. I'm trying to be better about that. Like, you'll see a theme in this unhaul that I'm trying not to read books just because they're popular. And because this is a book that I think is popular just to be popular, and also it's a thriller, I'm gonna unhaul this because I'm probably never gonna read this. And I'm trying to be better about like not keeping books that I'm not excited about, and I'm simply just like not excited to read this. The next book that I have on this like thriller stack is The Maid by Nita Prose, and I heard a lot about this as well on BookTube, and I believe I saw this in a free little library, so I just picked it up because it was from a free little library and it was free. But at the same time, I'm trying not to read books just because they're popular, and also it's a thriller book. And it gives me the same vibes as like what is it? There's another book that is about a maid, and it's a thriller book. And it kind of reminded me of that other book. I'll try to put that other book, the title here, and the author, just so that you know what I'm talking about. I forget the name of it. Let me try to look it up, actually. I want to say The Handmaid's Tale, but it's not The Handmaid's Tale. Oh, it's called The Housemaid. Okay, that's why I was getting it mixed up. So this book called The Maid kind of gives me similar vibes to The Housemaid by Frida McFadden. And that's the reason why I picked this up. It's also really short. I think it's under 300 pages. And I thought this would have been like a good book for me to like be introduced into like that kind of a realm where it's like a maid and it's like a thriller book. And I thought that if I liked this book, even though it's a different book entirely and a different author, maybe I was like, oh, if I like this, maybe I can give The Housemaid by Frida McFadden a try, just because they remind me of each other. But again, I'm trying not to read books just because they're popular, and I'm also not really into thrillers anymore. At least secular thrillers, maybe Christian suspense, but even that, I'm like, I don't know if I'd ever be interested in those. Maybe I'll try a Colleen Coble book, but like even that, like I said, I might not even enjoy that. So I'm gonna get rid of this. Almost done with the thriller section. So the next one is by Rachel Hawkins. It's Reckless Girls, and if I'm not mistaken, it's about this group of people who essentially go to this tropical island. I don't know if it's in Hawaii or like maybe just in the Pacific in general. And some shady things go on this island, like people disappear, people get murdered, whatever. And I, like I said, just don't see myself reading any more thrillers. I got this in a book of the month box when I was a subscriber to that. I'm no longer a subscriber just because I feel like the books that I have gotten from them, I'm like, these don't seem like things that I would be interested in. So I'm getting rid of this because first of all, it's a thriller. Not trying to read any more thrillers if I can try not to, you know? And also, like, I was thinking about reading this like maybe in the summertime because it definitely gives summer vibes with like the yellow cover and like the tropical flowers and like the palm leaves and things like that, and where it takes place is in like the Pacific Islands and stuff like that. So I was like, you know what? I don't even see myself reading, if I were to read a thriller, I don't foresee myself reading thrillers like in the summer. It just seems incorrect or wrong to read thrillers in the summer. If I feel like reading a thriller, it would probably be in the fall time or winter time. Definitely not in the summer, so I'm getting rid of this. The next two books in my thriller stack are by the same author, by Lucy Foley, and this is The Paris Apartment. I honestly don't know much about this book other than it taking place in a Paris apartment and some shady stuff goes on. I, like I said, don't really foresee myself reading a lot of thrillers in the future. And plus, this is another like book of the month book that I got. And book of the month, I have some beef with because, like I mentioned before, they basically have sent me books that just don't interest me. So, getting rid of this. The other Lucy Foley book that I got, I don't have the dust jacket on. It is called The Guest List. And it's just another thriller book that I'm not interested in. It's another book of the month book that I'm not interested in. And I honestly don't know what this is about either, other than I think it surrounds like a wedding or something like that. That's why it's called The Guest List. But yeah, just not interested at all. So getting rid of this. And that is essentially like the end of like my thriller stack that I'm trying to get rid of. I do have some like other maybe like thrillery books mixed in here, but I tried to separate them based on different categories. So let's get on to the next category, which I have this stack right here, which is essentially like the rom-com-y type fluffy books that also just don't interest me anymore. So let me pull this stack over and let me explain some of the books to you. So a reason why I'm getting rid of a lot of like the rom-com-y type fluffy books is because that's another genre that I'm just not interested in. Those books that have like the cartoony covers or just like seem like they have synopsises that are very shallow, I just am not interested in anymore. When I first started reading or getting into booktube and rereading books, or getting back into reading, I should say, those types of books did like intrigue me and interest me because of the covers. Like, I know this sounds really shallow of me, but like the covers of books really make me want to read the book even more. Like, I really do judge a book by its cover. So when I was getting back into reading and watching booktube content, I really was interested in the rom-com-y type books because they typically have those, you know, cartoony type covers or cute covers that are colorful and pretty. But after reading a few, I just realized that they're just not my thing. I like books that are more in depth and have character development and have a plot that has more of a meaning behind it rather than it just being all fluff and like, and then they fell in love. Like, I do love romance, don't get me wrong. My favorite genre that I'm finding out that I love is Christian historical romance, but at least with those, they have like more depth to the romance, if that makes sense. It's not just like them lusting after each other, which I find happens a lot in like these secular rom-com type books. So let me explain some of these books on this stack right here. So the first two books, you're probably gonna kill me, are the first two books in the Bridgerton series. It's The Duke and I and The Viscount Who Loved Me by Julia Quinn. And I was like literally obsessed with the Bridgerton series when it came out on Netflix. But I felt really convicted about watching that TV show because it's very spicy. And if you've watched it, you know what I mean. Like, there's a lot of sexual content in it, and even though, like, I love historical fiction, specifically Christian historical fiction or Christian historical romance, or I've even read like some secular historical fiction or secular historical romances that I love, but like knowing that like the Netflix series adaptation of these books is spicy, and I've heard that like the books are a little bit different than the TV series, I still just don't want to chance like reading a book that has like a bunch of spice in it, because for those who don't know, like I have struggled with like sexual sin in the past. I have lived with a boyfriend before. We've, you know, done things, and I definitely want to wait for marriage now. And I have struggled with like other sexual sins in the past, and I just like don't want to open myself up to tempting myself, if that makes sense, to that specific stuff. And don't get me wrong, like I think sex is a natural thing. Like you should want to have that in your life, but like it's only within the realm of, or the confines of marriage, that you should be doing that stuff. Like as a Christian, that's what I believe, and I know that's what God ordained that stuff for, is like within the bounds of marriage. So that's why I'm waiting. And if you enjoy spicy stuff, I'm not judging you by any means. And I also think on the opposite end of things, like I think in the Christian community, it's very taboo to talk about that stuff, and it shouldn't be. Like I think that's part of like that purity culture. Like I think we should talk more about like sex and stuff like that in the Christian community. That way like people aren't so scared of it, and it's not as taboo, because God did create it, but it's only within the bounds of marriage that it was created for. But anyways, I don't think it's just for me. Like I want to wait for marriage for that kind of stuff, and I don't want to like tempt myself to that kind of stuff before I am there. So that's why I'm getting rid of these. And you'll notice that like in some of these other books too, that's kind of the reasoning behind why I'm getting rid of these as well. The next book is Addicted to You by Krista and Becca Ritchie. And this series is so long, first of all. And second of all, it is like raved about on mainstream secular book talk, or booktube, I should say. And on book talk too, but like just like on booktube, I have seen this a lot too. I first was interested in this book because people were just raving about it, and I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna pick it up. But then I realized like a lot of people were saying like, oh, like you have to read this along with like this other series by these two authors, because they apparently write a lot of books together. And I think it's called like the Hot House Flower series, and I think between the two of them, like you have to like read them interchangeably, like not interchangeably, you have to like read one book from this Addicted to You series, and then you'd have to like switch over to the other series and so forth. Does that make sense? Like you'd have to like basically read the series together, and like I think there's a reading order on their website, the author's website. And between the two of those series, I think there's like 10 books or something like that, if I'm not mistaken. And I'm just like, I don't want to commit myself to such a long series like that. And the reason too that I bought this, not just because it was really hyped up on BookTube, but because I have another part of my testimony. Maybe I'll do like maybe a whole video on just my testimony in general. If you guys would be interested in that, comment below if you'd be interested in my testimony. But I guess I'll share a little bit of it here too. Like I have experienced loving someone with an addiction. My boyfriend was addicted to heroin, and I really don't see myself reading this. At first, when I first bought this, I was like, you know what, maybe it'll help me understand him a little bit better in his addiction and whatever. But at the same time, now that I'm not with him, I'm like, it's just gonna trigger a lot of things in me that I don't want to feel. I already have to deal with that kind of stuff like every single day. I think about it all the time. There's moments, I'm not gonna tear up. There's moments when I just remember and I'm like, I still love and care about this person, but obviously it's not healthy for me to be with him. So I don't want to read a book that's gonna remind me of those feelings. So that's another reason why I'm getting rid of this book, because I don't want to read a book about people with addictions, because it would just bring up a lot of really deep-seated feelings of what I've personally gone through. So like that's part of the reason why I'm getting rid of this as well. The next book that I am getting rid of is By a Thread by Lucy Score. I've heard a lot about Lucy Score on BookTube, and like I mentioned before, I'm trying not to read books that are just hyped up and are popular just to be popular. I honestly don't even know what this book is about. I just got it from a thrift store because I think I got it from Savers, like I was mentioning before, that thrift store that's really popular, at least where I am. And it was like for like $3 or $4, and I was like, oh, I've heard a lot about this author, let me just pick it up. There's a few other books by this author that I was interested in but weren't on my physical TBR, and I picked this up because I was like, oh, if I like her writing, then maybe I'll read the other books that she has. But like, I've heard that Lucy Score does write spicy books, so that's part of the reason too why I'm getting rid of this. So goodbye. The next book, you're probably gonna kill me about this one too. It's The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. Another book of the month book that I received. I think this was the first book that I received as a book of the month book. And for me, I just don't foresee myself reading this again. It's like a cartoonish type cover, and from what was described to me, this is about a girl who pretends to fake date this guy to make her like ex jealous, I think. And it's supposed to surround like the STEM world, if that makes sense, like science and math and stuff like that. So like I just am not interested in that kind of stuff. And like I heard Ali Hazelwood is also spicy, or at least has like some sort of spice in her books. I don't think she is the spiciest author out there, but I'm trying to stay clear of spicy in general. So I'm getting rid of this, and it's just super shallow and like fluffy looking to me, like with the cartoon cover, and like it seems kind of rom-com-y, and I'm just like not a huge like fake dating trope person. Like the two tropes that I absolutely will not read is marriage of convenience and fake dating, because I feel like those two types of tropes just seem so unrealistic to me. Like I'm the type of person, like if you're gonna write a romance, at least make it realistic. Like that's where I'm coming from. Like make it so that I can imagine that I could have a romance like that. And this just does not seem like something that I could easily obtain as a romance. So I'm getting rid of this. So this next 3 books in this stack of like fluffy or rom-com-y type books is A League of Extraordinary Women series, and it goes 1, 2, 3. It's by Evie Dunmore, I believe, the author. It's Bringing Down the Duke, A Rogue of One's Own, and A Portrait of a Scotsman. Like I mentioned, this is the first book, second book, and third book. And the reason why I first started wanting to read these was because, like, look at the covers. It's like that cartoony cover, and when I first started getting back into reading again, I was really drawn to like the cartoony covers. Like I mentioned before, like I really do judge books off the covers, and I was super interested in this book, and it's also a book of the month book, so I used the credits that I had to like get the whole entire series. That's another thing I'm trying to work on, is like not buying like series in their entirety before reading the first book. Like I at least just want to buy like the first book, or maybe even get it from the library, so I don't have to waste my money on like the entire series. But I really wanted to read this book, or this series I should say, because it is I believe like a historical romance, I believe. And it's something I honestly don't even know the synopsis of, really. I just bought it because I liked the covers and I heard it was like a historical romance. But I did listen to an audiobook that reminds me of this series. Let me try to find on Goodreads what it was. Oh, so it's called Reputation by Lex Croucher, I believe. And I listened to it on audiobook and on, I think, Audible. And like, just look at the cover of this. It reminds me a lot of these covers right here, like very similar. And it also, I think, takes place during like similar time period, I believe, of, you know, both of these books kind of take place during the same time. I think that's what I'm trying to say. Just by like the clothes that are represented on that cover. Essentially, this book, The Reputation by Lex Croucher, the one that I listened to on the audiobook, I was listening to it because I had, I think, a credit on Audible because I had a subscription at that point in time. I don't now, but I did at the time. And I was doing a lot of DoorDash. I have done DoorDash in the past as a driver, like delivering food. So I thought it would be a good good thing to listen to while I was doing DoorDash. And even like the synopsis on Goodreads says that it's basically Mean Girls meets Bridgerton. And when I was watching BookTube at that point in time, that's basically how it was described to me through different booktubers that I was watching. And I was like, oh, cool, like, that's something that sounds like I would be interested in. But I was listening to it and it was just so unbearable to listen to. Like, thank God I only listened to the audiobook because, like, it just seemed like such a cringe book. Like, it truly was Mean Girls meets Bridgerton. Like, they are accurate in describing it in that way. But at the same time, like, I think because it was described that way, like, I thought that would be something that I would be interested in because I do like Mean Girls, the movie, and I also like Bridgerton, the TV series. But just like when it manifested in a way in an audiobook or just a book in general, I just did not enjoy it at all. I found the characters super whiny. I found the plot to be super fluffy. But because Reputation by Lex Croucher really reminded me of this series, A League of Extraordinary Women, I believe it's called again, by Edie Dunmore, I just don't foresee myself reading this just because they seem like they would be similar and they remind me of each other. So I'm gonna get rid of these as well. And again, they're book of the month books and I just found myself not really interested in the books that they send me, so goodbye. So the next stack that I have, I kind of have it as like a miscellaneous thrift store stack. It's like books that I got from thrift stores that I just picked up to pick up, and I don't really know the reason behind why I picked them up, but the first one being Aesop's Fables. I don't have the dust jacket on this, but everyone basically knows what Aesop's Fables are. And I don't even foresee myself like reading this at all. I just wanted it on my shelf and I don't see a reason why I would keep this on my shelf. It's just like taking up space. If I really wanted to read an Aesop's Fable, then I would just like read it online or something. So I'm just gonna get rid of this. I also got this book from the thrift store that I manage. It's A Mother's Secret by Amy Clipston. And I do wanna try to read some Amish fiction. But I don't foresee myself reading this specific one. I found out later that this book is like a third book in the series. I got this from the thrift store that I manage, so it was free. I just took it, but I don't foresee myself reading this specific one because I already have some Amish fiction on my shelves already that I want to get to more. So I'm just gonna redonate this somewhere else because maybe someone else will enjoy it, and I don't feel like buying the other books in the series before I can get to this one, so goodbye. And then the next three books I also got from the thrift store that I manage. They're all, I believe, like middle grade or like children's books. The one is The Violet Flash by Mike Mason. I don't know what this is about. I just liked the cover, and I got it from the thrift store that I manage, so I just took it. I also liked like the edges on here. I don't know if you can see that well on camera, but it's like these rugged edges, like it looks like it's been ripped. So I liked that too, but like I don't know what it's about, and it's like basically a children's chapter book or like a middle grade book, so I'm getting rid of this. Another one is Heart of a Samurai by Margie Preus, and don't really know much about this other than it's probably about a samurai. And it's another like middle grade or like children's chapter book, and I don't really know what it's about other than that. So I'm gonna get rid of this as well. And then I have this. I don't know why this looks so familiar to me. The reason why I picked this up from the thrift store that I manage is because it looks so familiar. It's called Merry Fairy Holidays. It's basically a Christmas book by, I think, Wern. I think that's, no, that's the publisher. Wait. Papa LeQuezin and Kay Woodward. So it's two authors who wrote this, and I just don't foresee myself reading this. I have other Christmas books on my shelves that I want to get to other than this one, so I'm just going to get rid of it. Let some little girl enjoy that. The next stack that I have here are also from thrift stores. Not necessarily the thrift store that I manage, but thrift stores in general. And the reason why I picked them up is because they have like movie adaptations to them, or at least they're like super popular. And I'm trying to, like I said previously in this video, I'm trying not to read books that are popular just because they're popular. I'm not trying, the reason, I can't even speak. I'm trying not to read books for the sake of them just being popular or because they have movie adaptations. So the first one is The Woman in the Window by A.J. Finn. This is a thriller book. I could have included this in the thriller stack that I mentioned, but this I believe also has a movie adaptation that I thought would be fitting for this stack. But I got this at a thrift store, and I just don't foresee myself reading this just because I'm simply just not interested. Just because it has a movie adaptation and it's popular doesn't make me more interested in reading it. So I'm getting rid of this. The next one is kind of a thriller, I guess you would say, maybe a psychological thriller maybe. It's called Elias Grace by Margaret Atwood. And Margaret Atwood has also written The Handmaid's Tale, and first of all, I just don't want to read an author who has other books out there that I don't agree with. Like The Handmaid's Tale basically like promotes like toxic femininity or toxic feminism, that's what I should say, because The Handmaid's Tale is basically this like dystopian realm or world where she's basically trying to convey that The Handmaid's Tale could possibly happen like in the United States' future. And I don't believe that what she's trying to portray in The Handmaid's Tale could possibly happen in the United States. Like, I just don't think it's very accurate, and I don't think it could ever happen. It's The Handmaid's Tale, if you're not familiar, there's a TV series about it. It's basically, I believe, about these women who are essentially like these handmaids to these like wealthy like politicians and things of that nature, just to basically birth babies. A lot of these like politicians and like higher ups in like the United States or like this dystopian United States have wives already, but for some reason or another, like these like wives, I think, can't give birth, or like they can't produce enough children to like keep up with the man or something like that. That's basically the premise, and I don't agree with that because it makes the United States seem like where this like patriarchal like anti-woman country, and that's just for me not correct. And I don't want to read another book by her, specifically this one, Elias Grace. I believe there was like a series on like Netflix or like Amazon Prime about this specific book. I did watch it, and that's kind of why it intrigued me. But the ending was super confusing and open-ended, and I don't want to read something like that. I have read one thriller like that where it was kind of open-ended. It was Verity by Colleen Hoover, and I just didn't like that. I like when books have like finality to it. I also I also just don't like reading books when I've already watched like the series or movie before, so I'm getting rid of this one. The next book that I have is Crazy Rich Asians by Kevin Kwan, and for those who know, there is a movie adaptation to this, of course, just like the rest of the stack, and I did enjoy the movie. I did watch the movie before, and part of the reason why I don't want to read this is because I've already watched the movie before. This is a part of a series, so I guess I could read the rest of the series, but at the same time, like, I've already watched the movie, and I did get this from a thrift store like the rest of these books on this list. But I don't really see myself reading this just because I've already watched the movie. So, yeah, I'm getting rid of this. The next book is Lovely Bones by Alice Sebold. And I did watch the movie to this. This was super popular when I was like in middle school. And it's essentially about this girl who goes missing. It's a young girl, I think like also like middle school age, and she gets murdered. Like, this movie has been out for a while, so I don't mind literally like saying spoilers or things like that. Like, this movie has been out for years and years, okay? But I've watched the movie already, so that's one reason why I don't want to read this. And second of all, like, the movie and like just the premise of this book is just super sad and dark, and like I just don't want to read about like a child abduction and kidnapping and murder. Yeah, just dark and like just something I probably don't want to put my mind in that headspace, so goodbye. The next one is Water for Elephants. I already watched this movie and I thought it was super sad. There was one specific scene where they like literally beat the elephant in the movie, and I believe it's described in this book too. And I just don't want to read about that, so this is another book I'm getting rid of. Oh, and by the way, this is by Sarah Gruen. I don't think I mentioned that. And the last book that I got from a thrift store that's also a movie adaptation or a series adaptation is The Time Traveler's Wife by Audrey Niffenegger. I think that's how you pronounce her last name. But this is a movie that's been out for at least a decade, and even though it would probably be something that I would be interested in, it's time travel, and it probably falls under like historical fiction, but it was already a movie adaptation that I've already watched, and I don't like watching or reading books that I've already watched the movie to. Harry Potter and The Hunger Games are like a different realm because I feel like those were really popular books when I was a child, and I want to read those for like the nostalgia factor. But this is an adult book, and and it's also not a series, it's just a standalone book, and I just, like a lot of these are, you know, and I just don't see myself interested in reading this at all. And then there's one final stack that I kind of have as like the miscellaneous stack that I'm gonna get into now. It's a really short stack. The first one isn't really a book, it's like a travel journal, and I think I got this from Marshall's like when I was like in high school, when I was going on like a lot of missions trips and things like that. And it basically just opens up, and it's really cute. Like, it has a lot of like envelope type things in it. It looks like a very vintage type journal. It basically looks like almost like you're supposed to put like passport stamps in it and things like that. There's maps and things, and so basically it'll say like destination, date, and weather, and there's like little lines where you can put basically like your thoughts of like where you are and stuff. And I got this, like I said, when I was like going on all these mission trips when I was like in high school and things, and I thought I would have documented like my experiences in this book, but I ended up not doing that, and I haven't been on a missions trip in a very long time, which I probably want to sometime in the future, but just financially I'm not able to do that right now. So I'm gonna get rid of this. Maybe someone else will make use of it. Maybe I'll put it in like a free little library and someone will be interested in it. The next book that I have is The Indebted Earl by Erica Vetch. I think that's how you pronounce her last name. Essentially, I got this when I was working at christianbook.com, if you're familiar. I was a customer service representative and we got discounts on books. And someone ordered this on the phone with me. And I went to the website because it sounded something like something I would be interested in. And I immediately ordered it because I got a discount. And like I had mentioned before, I'm trying to get more into Christian fiction, but now I'm realizing that this is a third book in a series. I did not realize that. It literally says 3 right here on the spine. But it is Christian historical romance, which is like totally up my alley. That's like my favorite genre. But because it is like the third book in a series, I just don't see myself like reading the first 2 books to get to this book. The other 2 books I read on like Goodreads, like the synopsises, didn't interest me. So I'm gonna get rid of this. Hopefully someone else enjoys it, and maybe they can read the other 2 in the series as well. But yeah, that's the only reason why I'm getting rid of it. And the last and final book, finally, is My Mother's Eyes by Anna Ornstein. I think that's how you pronounce it. I don't know. But basically this is about a Holocaust survivor. I can't even speak. It's at the end of the video, so please forgive me if I'm not speaking English very well. But basically it's like a memoir of a Holocaust survivor. And I did read this already. And it was just very sad. And I don't foresee myself rereading this. So hopefully I can put this in like a free little library or something and someone else will enjoy it. Like I did find myself learning a lot from this book, and it's very short, it's very thin. I believe it's under 300 pages or maybe even 200 pages. Yeah, it's like 170 pages, so it's very short. It was really easy to get through, but like I said, it was very sad. It's about the Holocaust. It's about her life during that time, and then she ends up moving to the United States after. But I recommend it if you're like interested in learning more about like her life and like what it was like as a Holocaust survivor. But I just don't foresee myself rereading this. It's just very sad, and I don't like having sad books on my bookshelf. Hopefully someone else, like I said, could read this and gain some insight like I did. But yeah, I'm getting rid of this one as well. But yeah, that is the end of my book unhaul. I'm probably gonna bring the majority of these, as I should say. Like I said, I can't speak English right now. But I'm probably gonna bring the majority of these books to a free little library. Probably multiple. I can't put all 31 of these books in just one singular free little library. I'll try to find multiple ones that I can go to throughout my town. But yeah, I'm gonna probably bring the majority of these to free little libraries. I love those things. They're so cute. If you don't know what they are, they're basically like these little mini houses like that look like they're almost like mailboxes. They're like on this pole, and it's like a little mini house. There's a door you can open up, and like you can put a book in there and you can trade it for another if you find a book that's in there that you want to read. But basically you can go on the free little library website, and they have like a not GPS, there's like a satellite map, I guess, of ones in your community. All you have to do is like put in your zip code. I'll try to put the website down in the description below. Or if I can't find room in those free little libraries, I'll probably bring them to the thrift store that I manage, or like maybe another thrift store. But yeah, thank you for watching today's book unhaul. I'm probably not going to show you me going to these free little libraries or donating them. I did in my last book unhaul, but you guys get the point. I listed all of the books that I'm unhauling, and I think that's what you guys are most interested in. But yeah, I'm gonna go do that now, and I hope that someone else can enjoy these books other than me. They're just sitting there on my shelf, not really doing much, and now my bookshelves are looking really sad because they're kind of empty. But yeah, I'm gonna go do that now. Hopefully someone else will enjoy these books more than me, because they were just sitting there on my shelf, not being read. And I just love seeing my bookshelves being a little bit empty, I should say, because it just gives me the motivation and the inspiration, the hope I guess you could call it, to fill them up with books that I actually would want to read. They're kind of looking sad right now, like being so empty, but at the same time, like, it gives me some hope, some inspiration, some motivation to go get some books that I actually would want to enjoy. But yeah, thank you for following along today's video. I know it was long and lengthy, but I honestly love watching long, lengthy YouTube videos. That's why I love YouTube so much, because you can have lengthy videos like this. I think that's like the reason why YouTube is here, is so that you can post videos that are long form rather than short form like Instagram or TikTok or YouTube Shorts even. But yeah, thanks for following along today's video. Do all the YouTube things that you know how to do, like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!